Studying the craft of writing is essential if you want to become a better writer, but there's not a lot of structure in the writing world in terms of how to do it. Right? So in this video, I'm going to give you a game-changing technique and a mindset shift that completely changed the way that I saw fiction, and once you learn it, you'll never be able to unsee it. What's up, guys? Michael Laron here with Author Level Up, helping you write world-class stories better and faster. And if you're new here, consider subscribing and click that little bell, ding, 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 to get notifications every time I have a new writing video every week. And in this video, we're talking about a game-changing technique that I've learned to use that has revolutionized the way that I see fiction. And I have to start this with a story. Okay, because I can't tell a story without talking about some sort of an analogy. It's my fatal flaw. So anyway, there's an outlet mall not that far from where I live in Iowa, and in this outlet mall, there's lots of different like fashion designers, and they sell their clothes at like a discount sometimes. And so it's a really great place to get clothes, but it can also be a really crappy place to get clothes sometimes because the clothes sometimes have defects with them, right? Like the seams might not be in the right place, or there might be some blemish on the stuff. So you have to be careful when you're looking at the clothes. Anyway, I was at this outlet mall with my wife, and I was looking at, I think it was like some shirts. And I bought a really bad shirt once, so I'm always very careful at the shirts that I buy. And so what I do is I inspect every part of the shirt. And so I get the shirt, and I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at the sleeves, making sure the seams aren't out of place. I'm looking at the collars. I mean, I look at everything, right? And so I happened to buy some shirts, and my wife went to one of the stores, and so I'm kind of just waiting for her, and there's no place to sit, and so I'm on my phone, and I was reading, I think, a Michael Crichton novel at the time, and I was reading it on my phone, and I'm standing next to this rack of clothes. So what I noticed that Crichton was doing that was really interesting, and I would have never known this if I hadn't been at this clothing store, was that the openings to his chapters were almost like the same length. Like if you look at some of his chapters, and this is not necessarily true of just Crichton, but if you look at his chapters, it's like 400, 500 words, and then the chapter begins. Like he took that long to open up and set his scenes. And then what I started noticing was it would be 400 to 500 words, and then there would be like a sentence or a phrase that would transition into the next 400 to 500 words. And then after that, there would be a transition into another 400 to 500 words. And so what I started to notice was that, this looks a lot like looking at clothes and looking for seams. So I'm going to put up a picture on the screen of kind of how this looked. So you'll see here that you've got an opening, and you've got, the black marks, or I think are the text. And then you've got the red lines. The red lines is what I like to call a turn of thought. So a turn of thought is essentially, it's that segue. So if you think about opening a chapter, and you think about 500 words or 400 words, establishing the character in that setting. So setting the setting, explaining why the character's there, and then using sensory details, that's going to take up about the first 400 to 500 words. And then you finish that off and you clean it up with a seam. Right, and that seam could be the character thinking about something. It could be a knock on the door. It could be a realization, and then you launch into the next section. Right, and I noticed this chapter after chapter after chapter, and then all of a sudden I could never unsee it. It was like every time I picked up a book, I would start looking for the seams, and it was true in every Crichton novel I read. It was true in almost every Nora Roberts novel I read. It was true with James Patterson. And then all of a sudden it was like, holy crap, what have I found here? And so that is the game-changing secret, is to think about fiction as fabric, not only when you're reading it, but when you're writing it. So when you sit down to write your next chapter, I want you to think about it in seams. So you open that scene, you set it up, right? You use the five senses. Why is the character there? You establish the setting. and then you finish with the turn of thought, which is your seam, and then you move into the next section. And what I found is that if you're studying mega bestsellers or the writers that you like, you can start looking at what you're talking about in 500 word increments, right? Because if you're going to implement a writing technique, try to do it within 500 word increments, because that's what the mega bestsellers are doing. And so in my last video, I did a rundown of how to study the craft of writing better. And one of the tips that I had in that video was to think small. If you think small, 500 word increments, look at what's happening between the seams. That's how you can start to study fiction better. So let me know in the comments, was this video a game changer for you? If it was, I've got an entire book of secrets just like this, and it's completely free. It's called the Writing Craft Playbook. You can get your copy at authorlevelup.com/fanclub. I talk about the seam method, fiction is fabric, and I talk about a whole bunch of other things that I've observed mega bestsellers do ever since I found out about that fiction is fabric technique. So if you want more game-changing techniques, get it at authorlevelup.com/fanclub. With that, don't forget to subscribe. I hope that this video helped you, and I will see you in the next one.